All right. Welcome back and thanks for joining. This is a session many of us, and that's real patient. We are so grateful to have three empowered women here today who have dealt with infertility themselves and are here to share their stories with us. Um, I'm so sorry. Are we good now? Okay, great. So today we have Pooja Seth, is a longtime friend and patient at Generation Next Fertility who has formed a close relationship with our community. We have Ali Preto, who is the founder of Infertile AF and Fertility Rally, where her platforms focus on bringing people together who have gone through IVF. And we have Laura Kratis, and she is a very special and fabulous friend of mine who is a fertility doula and the founder of Rooted in Fertility, a fertility journey concierge service. So I know we have so many questions to get to, but I'll let Allie kind of introduce herself first and take it from here. Allie.
Hi, thanks, Destiny. Hey,
Of course.
everybody. Thanks for being here today. So I'm Ali Prado. I am, as Destiny said, the founder of the podcast called Infertile AF, which I started in 2019. I'm also the co-founder of Fertility Rally, which is a community for people who are going through assisted reproductive technology, infertility, miscarriage, loss, kind of everything. We've got thousands of members since we launched in 2020. And the whole reason I started both those things was because I had my own secondary infertility journey. And when I was going through it, I was so lost and alone. I didn't have any resources, hardly at all. Spoiler alert, I did have a son through IVF, my second child. But he's almost 9. So this was, a little while ago. And thankfully the landscape has changed dramatically since I was going through it. And there's so many more things like this and resources out there. But basically, it's become my passion and my mission to help people feel less alone and to help people coming after me navigate this really terrible world of infertility and, just make it easier for them. So happy to be here. I'm happy to share my story and answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that introduction, Allie. Pooja?
Hi, I'm Pooja. So I actually, a lot of you might have heard my story. It's a little tragic and happy at the same time, but I am a longtime patient with Dr. Luke. I've been with her for about 8 years. I graduated last year and I finally had a baby girl, but it's been a long journey and I'm so happy to be on this panel just to talk about my ups and downs in fertility and everything I went through. And just giving hope to women out there that are in the same situation that I was in for so many years. And I just felt so alone and didn't have anybody to reach out to. And I'm hoping that this panel can help women just kind of feel like they're not alone and they have other people and other women that have gone through the same journey that they might be going through. So nice to be.
Thank you for being here and thank you for sharing that. Laura, please.
Yes, I am so excited to be here today, Destiny. I just think it's so important that we speak about these topics out loud, especially when we're going through the journey. My journey started all the way back in 2016, and I always sum my journey up through crying in stairwells. I think I've cried in every stairwell in New York City. I used to have my crying corners in every corporate business. Even when I was getting my master's degree in Texas, I used to cry in that stairwell. So, and I created Rooted in Fertility so that I could also empower women to get out, or people to get out of the stairwell and get back to life at the same time when they're having to go through these treatments. So I'm just so excited to, happy to answer any questions about what I've been through and how I support people.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I thought it'd be good to talk and kick it to Pooja for a minute. And a lot of the audience always wants to know, like, how hard is IVF? Is IVF worth it? What are your thoughts? And I know you were really open with Dr. Luke on her podcast, Heart to Heart. And for those who didn't hear it, I want you to dive in a little bit more and a little deeper, if that's okay, and your experience.
Well, I think initially, going through IVF, I did it about 8 years ago. I
Mm-hmm.
did go to the big IVF clinics that probably everybody goes through when they first start out. And it seemed like they all had the same pushback with me. And it's like, you should think about adopting. It's not going to work for you. And it really a letdown right from the gates. Like you don't even get to like try or even it's always a letdown right in the beginning for
Wow.
me. And so I did switch clinics twice before I met Dr. Luke. And finally, on my last try, my acupuncturist was the one who said, give it one more shot with this woman in the city. It was a long journey for me because I live 2 hours away from the city. So she was just like, you have to just venture into the city and see her, because if anybody's gonna help you out, it's her. She's different than the people you've been going through. You need like a specialty doctor that can deal with your situation, which I had DOR, diminishing ovarian reserve. And so no other doctor like that were these big doctors in Long Island, even in New York City, they just didn't want to deal with my situation, especially 8 years ago. It wasn't prevalent back then as much as it is now. You hear about it more, I feel like. So I did go into the city. I did meet Dr. Luke, and she did, just the first sentence that came out of her mouth was like, if you stick by me, I'm gonna stick by you, and we're gonna make this happen for you because you want it so badly. Oh my God. It's my daughter's birthday today, and I just can't believe
Oh my gosh. I love that.
So we did 8 years. I banked my eggs year after year, cycle after cycle. Tons of my eggs went in the trash in front of my face because I didn't do the anesthesia, so I was awake throughout the whole process when they were taking my eggs out. And I finally banked enough in 2020, of course, when the pandemic hit. So my journey really started during the pandemic is when I had my first transfer. And right after the pandemic was over and we were allowed to do the transfers in the summer, I did do the transfer on I think I put 3 in at the same time, and I did get pregnant. But of course, it ended up in a miscarriage 2 months later. I mean, it wasn't going to be easy for me. It wasn't going to be like, oh, this is easy. No, it was going to get harder. It was going to get harder, and it got worse before it got better. And so 4 months later, Dr. Luke was like, let's try some more. And so we put another one in, just one. And I did get pregnant, and I was pregnant, and it worked. And months went on, and I'm still pregnant. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God, like I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to be a mom. It's been 8 years. And 9 months later, I'm like 35 weeks, and I feel something's off with my body. And I tell my OB, and I'm like, I feel something's off. And she's like, no, your baby's been acting this way throughout your whole pregnancy. She just doesn't move as much. It's just what she does. And I was like, no, there's a gut on this. Like, I just feel something's definitely off. And so I went home that night. I still felt it. And that night, I went to the hospital locally by my house, and they showed me my daughter at 2 a.m. Like, look, she's sleeping. Her hand was in front of her eyes like this. And I was like, okay. And her heart rate was great. I was like, okay. So I went home, and like probably like 4 hours later, she passed away in my tummy. So I I actually felt it when I woke up. I was like, something's wrong, because I didn't go to the bathroom all night. I mean, I used to go to the bathroom like 4 times a night. Like, I just didn't go at all. And I'm like, something's wrong. Like, so I went back to my OB the next morning, and they couldn't find the heart rate. And so I could deliver my baby so now 7 years later, I have a stillbirth. And so Dr. Luke was notified right away. And I think at that point, Dr. Luke just broke. Like, it broke her to the point, like we both didn't know how to comprehend what to do next. And then we just, I got a surrogate at that point, because mentally I just wasn't prepared to start again. And of course, didn't work out with surrogate either. I mean, she lost my baby too. She miscarried. So that was gone, and she actually had problems with her DNC, so she couldn't put another embryo in. So at that point, Dr. Luke's like, you got one more embryo left. That's it. You got one. So if it either works or it's over, like you're of that age, you can't do anything after this. This is it. So I put the embryo in, and 9 months later, I had my baby girl, and that was last year.
Wow.
Yeah. So my journey has been very painful. Like when women tell me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. But for me, there was more, and then more, and then more. Like I'm like, one miscarriage was like, I know it was very painful for me at the time, but that was like nothing compared to what was ahead for me.
Mhm.
So, but Dr. Luke, the best, like the best. I couldn't have been a mom without her. I don't think so.
Wow. I
I
mean,
think a doctor sticking by a patient is like the most important thing that you need in IVF.
mhm.
You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you answered that question, IVF is not for the faint of heart. They
No,
call us warriors for a reason, and it can be worth it if you persist and you're resilient and you m- push as hard as you humanly bound, physically can. And
right.
and look, at the end of the day, it's a lottery ticket, right? It's not a jackpot, it's not a guarantee. And wow, Pooja, I mean, that is quite the journey. And I know when we think about how hard this journey is, we start thinking about too, like our support system and like how do we navigate that? Allie, I know you started Fertility Rally because you wanted to bring together community. How do we support our friends with infertility? How do we support our sisters, our aunts, our cousins, what would you suggest?
I think it's so important to find your people if you're going through this. And, yeah, like you said, the reason I co-founded Fertility Rally is because I just didn't have a group. I would go on Facebook and it was just like these large groups, but it was kind of like hard to navigate because it wasn't really vetted and people were talking about a million different things. I remember going to the bookstore after my fourth miscarriage and looking for books about miscarriage. And the section was like 2 inches wide, like about miscarriage. And I was like, where are all these books? Why is no one talking about this? I know it's so common. I know that, this is happening to so many people around the world, but it seems so taboo. And again, this was a handful of years ago, but I still feel like we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
So that's why, community, I think, is so important. And I think that there's so much power in storytelling and vulnerability and us, saying this isn't a beautiful, cute story with necessarily a happy ending, but it's my story. And I'm
yeah,
here to share it because I want you to feel less alone. I think that that's what I was so desperately craving. Instagram wasn't really big when I was going through this. It was like around, but it wasn't as big as it is now. But that's actually one of the places that I started to find my infertility community. That's how I connected with Blair Nelson, my co-founder. She came on my podcast, and then we were like, we should throw an event for infertility warriors. So we started planning an event, and it was going to be in person. It was going to be called Fertility Rally, and then COVID hit and the world shut down. So we got our money back on the venue that we'd reserved. We were going to do it in Brooklyn, but and we started doing everything virtually, and that's how Fertility Rally was born. And now it's support groups and it's virtual and IRL events, and it's basically everybody's welcome. No matter what you're going through, we have lots of people that are going through surrogacy or adoption, or people who are childless not by choice but want to stay within the group to connect with other people still. So I think it's just there's so much power in community, whatever that community looks like for you.
I completely agree, and thank you for sharing that. And how would you suggest supporting a friend? So let's say you have conceived naturally, but you see your friend or your sister or somebody who you love needs that support. There's a lot of misconceptions about this toxic positivity. You know what I mean? Where you just say, "Oh, just relax, it's going to happen," or
Yeah.
when you least expect it, or "Why don't you just adopt?" Or all these questions or comments that people make, and sometimes not even in a negative connotation, right? But just they think that's what they should say, or they think that's what they should do. What do you recommend? And please, if anybody in the group has any recommendations, feel free to be collaborative here. But what do you do? when your friend's going through infertility, and how do you become a good support system for that person, or I don't know, what do you say? What would
Um,
we, you know?
yeah, I would say if your friend is going through this and you haven't been through it yourself, it is hard to know exactly what they're going through. But I think that a very good thing to do is sometimes just be honest and say, I can't exactly relate to what you're going through, but I love you and I'm listening and I'm here and your feelings are valid. So often, people just want to be heard and they want to be seen and they want to know that what they're going through is okay. So, I think if you do find community of people that are also going through infertility or something similar as you, the beauty of that is you can kind of cut through the BS and you can be like, I'm really jealous when I see a pregnant person, and other people are like nodding their heads like, I get it. I've been there. So having people who've gone through similar journeys and being able to speak honestly about, the way that you feel. And sometimes, like you said, toxic positivity, it's not always positive. Sometimes you're feeling really, really terrible. I had a terrible bout of depression when I was going through this, lots of therapy, relationship problems. Like, it was really, really hard mentally on me. And to have a space where I could just say, I feel like shit. And, I need you to know how hard this is. And for people to understand, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, when we talk about support, we also think about our partners and going through this journey sometimes. And I said this in another session that sometimes it can feel imbalanced, but I think we all know here that it is, in fact, reality is that it's imbalanced, is that you're going through all the ultrasounds and all the blood work and you're doing all the injections. So it does feel like you're doing all the work. And, how do we want our partners to support us during this journey? I mean, I think, Laura, do you have any thoughts on this, especially as a
Yeah.
fertility doula and somebody who's kind of in there working side by side with the medical team, working side by side with the patient? How does the partner support the person? How do maybe you want to even support your partner? Maybe they're taking it hard. I don't want to make any judgments on who, or what. But what are your suggestions and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we all know it's hard, and especially as a partner going through this process. I kind of don't make the rules, but I always say that the lead person is the one who has to take the shots to the butt, right? And the support person has to follow their lead at
Yeah.
times. And you may be going through your own things, but sometimes you got to focus on the person who's putting their body on the line for this and for the dream, for the
Yeah.
family. So I say first, just ask and ask often, how can I support you? And
Mhm.
then number one, listen, right? And don't do this just because, like, right before you're starting the egg retrieval or right before the procedure. Do it because it's a random Tuesday and you actually really care about what they're feeling. It helps. So I would say definitely asking how you want to be supported and listening. I would also say find your lane, right? Like, so much of it kind of comes on our shoulders. I remember I had a failed egg retrieval and I cried so hard and I didn't know who to call. And I called my best friend who was a doula. And she said, today we're going to cry and tomorrow we're going to fight. And I loved that, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when I got there, I was like, okay, my dad's a NICU doctor and my mom's a scientist. And I was like, give me all the medical journals. I need to understand what's going on right now. And my husband was like, where's my place in this, right? And so it's
Mhm.
really important to find his lane, right? So he loves spreadsheets. So I was like, put the whatever my follicle size are, put them in the spreadsheets. So then I can go back between cycle to cycle and know my lining data points, right? I'm not good with it, but it was great to have that input. Also, finances, insurance. It can be so overwhelming. A lot of people come to me just for that part of the journey. But if you want to take that on, take something that you can consistently do to take the burden off your partner, I think is really important. Also motivation, fun text and gifts, real gifts, and also text gifts, just to break the tension. You want to laugh, you want to have that camaraderie together. And then just also honoring lifestyle choices, right? Like, I overhauled my diet. I went gluten-free, dairy-free. I did everything possible. So if I'm taking a horse pill vitamin, we're taking a horse pill vitamin. If
Mhm.
you're going alcohol free, we're going alcohol free, right? That support really goes a long way. And I would also say just being that person that kind of takes the brunt from the families. Like, you two are a pair and it's you guys against the world. So really own that. So like, if your partner doesn't want to go to Thanksgiving because your sister just announced she's pregnant with baby number 12, we're not going to Thanksgiving. And then you take the brunt of that from your mother so that she can do what she needs to do. So I think these are like, and then, I love my snap shows and my investigate, but here's some things not to do. Don't say being irrational. Don't say you're being crazy. I don't want to talk about this. If they want to talk about it 45 times, let them. So I feel like that's really good.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice for partners because sometimes it's hard. They don't really know what to say. They don't know how to navigate. They don't know, or you don't know what to say to your mother-in-law, or why you're not going to Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the case may be. Pooja, do you have any insight, or what maybe, or and anybody too, like any tips or maybe things that you wish your partner or not wish, or would have liked your partner to do, or what you would like somebody to do for you, or when you were going through your experience? I think Laura, you mentioned some really good ones, but
So I think basically when I first started, the novelty, we were together on the journey, but as the years went by, like any other, partner, they're like, okay, so when is this going to be over? Like, when are we going to just chalk it up and say this is not going to work? And that's,
Mhm.
I get it from their perspective, but I think from the person that's going through it,
Yeah.
there's more to IVF than just a journey. It's a woman feels like their body doesn't work. They feel inadequate. There's just so much more mental problems going on because, hey, we're born to do this. Like, what do you mean? Like, what, I mean, it just
Yeah.
like, there's just so much more than just being on a journey, like, and trying to have all these drugs make eggs and give you a baby. It's more like we just feel just like a man feels inadequate during their situations and times. Women, this is the biggest time that a woman does feel inadequate is when we can't get pregnant, or and we have problems in our fertility. Like, it's such a taboo thing that nobody really talks about, but that is how I felt throughout the 8 years. Like, I felt there was
Yeah.
something always wrong with my body. It wasn't working. And I used to say that to Dr. Luke all the time. Like, I just feel inadequate. Like, things just don't work with me, and she's like, that's not it. Like, it has nothing to do with that,
Mhm.
but that's just how it feels,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
So, but I
Well,
think I get it from his perspective, but like, I guess I think there's just a compromise there, especially with my journey, because it was just so many years. It's almost a decade. So,
And there's a lot of isolation in that, Pooja. I see with my clients a lot that sometimes they just need to pick up a phone and talk to someone. I love that you had that with Dr. Luke, but you don't always get that with your doctor. So that's so special because you want to pick up the phone and have a best friend on the other end that just gets it. And
yeah.
that we don't have to talk about everything, but like can analyze it, process, and then you guys move forward together. So I love that you had that with Dr. Luke.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I didn't have any friends or anybody that I knew that was doing IVF. And it's funny because now, like, and I did it in secret. So I had like such a large family. Nobody knew I was doing IVF. None of my friends except for one.
Mhm.
No idea until I got pregnant and I lost my child and all this stuff came out. Like, wait,
Right.
first of all, how'd you get pregnant? Second of all, what's going on? Then like, the things
Yeah.
start 8 years you did this, like, yeah, you know what I mean? So it's another thing. Like, my life was just so secretive and we weren't allowed to tell anybody and he wasn't allowed to say anything. And so it was just so much more going on in this
Mhm.
whole
Mhm.
situation. So,
Hate that you were alone in that.
Yeah.
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 And now I know hundreds of friends going through the same journey that I am. Now they're ready for it. It's like I was like the first, and now they're all following suit after me now.
And it's interesting too because we think about statistics, right? And the World Health Organization says 1 in 6 people are affected with infertility. So even though this is such a lonely and isolating process, it doesn't have to be. And I think this is the best part of this conversation right now is that there is community out there. It is horrible and isolating, but it certainly doesn't have to be alone. And I think the three of you are a real testament to what community building really can and how it can really impact so many people. And I want to ask this question because I got this from the community the other night, and it's a hard one. And it's, what advice can you give me to keep me hopeful? And I think that's tough. I think that's a hard question to ask because a lot of this is tough.
Mhm.
Any thoughts? Any words of, I don't know if it's encouragement. I don't know if it's advice. I don't know. What are your thoughts on how do we keep things, or how do we keep
Yeah.
hopeful? How do we keep hope alive in this journey?
Oh, go ahead, Allie.
Okay, I'll just say really quickly. I think it is important to try and stay hopeful, but I also want to play the other side of that and say that if you are not feeling hopeful at certain points, like that's okay too. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we don't normalize that this is really, really hard, and you can get, mentally really broken down and beat down. And I will have people on my podcast who are like, am I terrible that I don't feel hopeful? I feel sad and I feel nervous. And, I try to tell them that, that's okay too. So I think it is important to stay hopeful if you can, but also knowing that if you don't feel hopeful, don't beat yourself up about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I also feel like talk to yourself like your best friend, right? We talked about being the best friend through the process. That's why I started Root Infertility, because I just wanted to be that person for people. But
Yeah.
also talking to yourself, like you're not broken, right? You're strong. Your body's going through things. Hormones do crazy things to your body, weight gain and this, and it's going to make you feel bad, but just know that you are doing something very important, and that you're show up for yourself. Um, I always say there's sparkle moments on the journey and data points moments. There's no failure when you're going on this journey. You got to pivot and shift and turn. And I think it's really important to honor that and where your emotions lie. And I think, if you need to stay in bed and watch Gilmore Girls for a week, then you need to stay in bed and watch Gilmore Girls for a week, and that's okay.
It's Gilmore Girls season, so I love that you gave that advice at the appropriate time in New York City. You know what I mean? Because it is Gilmore Girls season.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really, I like the both sides of that coin too, because I think it's important to say, yeah, you do have to be your best friend, and it's okay if you can't and you just need to stay in bed, or you need to just close the blinds for a little while and say
Mhm.
no to that baby shower invite, say no to that, mute yourself on Instagram or Facebook or whatever you need to do. I think those are setting healthy boundaries too, and that's really a form of self-care when you're going through this journey.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another question we have, and I know, I'm sure all of us may have some insights on this. I certainly know I do. When it comes to finding infertility support groups near me, I myself lead and run Candid Conversations, which is a peer-led support group that's really just about kindness and support. We meet once a month at 7 p.m. virtually, and we just sit and talk. There's times we're talking about triggers. We're talking about, I don't know, in-laws, we're talking about friends, we're talking about castor oil packs. I mean, I think it's nice to have a sense of community. And I know, Allie, again, with Fertility Rally and things that you offer from a support group standpoint, how have some of you even navigated? Did you find support groups?
Mhm.
Did you find it to be helpful, a good resource? Are you selective? We had a session earlier today about mental health, and I didn't even know there was this many forms of different types of therapy that you could utilize, whether it's hypnosis or whether it's EPT or all these other things. And there's docs for that, so don't worry. But yeah, anything that you can offer, insights or good resources?
Yeah, at Root Infertility, I like to link people that are going through similar journeys. So if you're on an IUI, you're connecting with somebody who's on the IUI track. Because I find sometimes comparison can become a very big deal during this journey. Oh, she got this many eggs, and why are my follicles not working? I should only have
Yeah.
two. But then you're leaving parts of the story out where she has PCOS, and though she may have a quantity but not quality. So I love support groups, but I also love finding that one-on-one person and connecting people so that you
Mhm.
actually have someone to go along the journey with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I'll add, if you don't mind, Destiny.
Please.
I think that, like Laura said, it is important to find the people that are kind of similar. And I just want to throw it out there that if anybody watching right now wants to check out a fertility rally support group, just get in touch with me. Happy to have you check one out. I host the one every Wednesday night with Blair Nelson, my co-founder. We've been doing it every single Wednesday since June 2020. And then we have a Sunday support group. We have a surrogacy and IP support group. We have a motherhood after infertility support group, a pregnancy after infertility support group. And then we have sometimes we have a West Coast friendly support group that's a different time zone friendly. So lots of stuff out there. We always say our tagline for Fertility Rally is the worst club with the best members, because nobody wants to be there, but everybody's so amazing and willing to help each other.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw it out there. If anybody wants more info or wants to check it out or has questions, please don't hesitate. Everybody's welcome, no matter what you're going through.
And I just want to mention that we do have a lot of these great links and resources that are available to you on your right-hand side in the docs section of this session. So don't hesitate to go in there, start clicking around. I know there's some really good resources for anybody who's experiencing infertility and really wants to build community or do something one-on-one or needs a fertility doula. We're all in there. So please don't be shy about that. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about feeling overwhelmed. And how are we coping with the emotional baggage that comes with IVF? Because yes, I think support groups are great. I think therapy and mental health is great. But did you guys find anything particularly helpful when you were feeling so overwhelmed? Or what would you tell this audience member who's feeling so overwhelmed and just really doesn't know how to cope with this emotional baggage when, as they're cycling?
Yeah. I always tell my clients that rooted infertility sometimes, if you're not feeling this way, I'm going to need to take you to Bellevue, because this is what happens. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel emotional and tired. And it's not just the hormones, but it's the journey. And I know after I went through fertility with my daughter, Carter, and then I ended up I had a miscarriage, and then I ended up getting pregnant with Carter. I took that. I held on to her so tight. I had a C-section because I was holding on to her so tight. I didn't want to let her go. And I feel like processing it in the moment while you're going through it. That's why Allie's groups are great. Rooted in Fertility, having somebody one-on-one is wonderful, because you're processing it now. So that when you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so when you get there, it's just a little bit easier, and it's the picture that you're painting.
Yeah. I want to speak to what Laura said earlier about crying in stairwells. That really resonated with me. Mine was the car. I was always crying in the car or the shower. I remember one time I had 4 miscarriages, and I had diminished ovarian reserve. And I remember calling the doctor, and they were like, "Oh, you're probably miscarrying," just so flippant about it. And I was crying and pounding the ground. And I remember I started laughing because I was I feel like I'm in a movie right now. It's so dramatic. But I think it's important, and answering the question, to feel all the feels. That helps you get through the overwhelm, is just feeling the feels, whether it's crying in a stairwell or pounding the floor and sobbing like you're in a movie. It's okay to feel that way. And I think, sometimes we're told to just suck it up and, don't feel that way. But I think it's really important to work through, because infertility is traumatic, and, you have to work through the trauma by honoring your feelings, whatever they may be.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that's great. How do you manage the anxiety and external pressure, especially when it seems like everyone is having a baby? It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is your time to be selfish. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to stop following those people on Instagram that keep posting things. It's your time to be selfish. And if you don't want to go to that baby shower, it's okay to say to your friend, "I love you. I am sending you the best gift, but I just can't show up for myself and you today." And that's okay. And I really think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think true friends will understand that too. It's
Definitely.
scary to say no to stuff like that and to feel like you're not being a good friend. But Laura, you're exactly right. You kind of have to put yourself first when you're going through this, because you have to protect your heart and you have to protect your mental health. And sometimes, like who just said, like on, getting off social, or, just kind of removing yourself from a place where you'd see a lot of pregnant people, where there might be triggers. That's really important to do as well. So you have to kind of advocate for yourself in that way.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Let's see. Is sharing your story hard now, or is it empowering?
I
Pooja,
was
you
the
want
one.
to take that? Laura, want to take? Yes, please.
I think I was on backstage saying I'm too scared to tell my story because the last time I did was during the fertility rally in 2021. Too scared, I'm gonna cry. So I think, but I think there's power in sharing their own story. But I think it's important that other people hear your story. Just hearing Pooja and Ali today, I'm just so amazed. It's not a club you want to be part of, but everyone's so incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I think like sharing my story, it helps me still heal, because I'm still like healing every day from losing my daughter. But and it also, like, I love giving hope to other women that are going through this journey, and they probably don't see like a glimmer of hope yet. Like they just are going through the process and they don't know what's going to happen at the end. But I tell everybody, just have faith, and let faith take route. Like, you can't, this is like a miracle, so you don't have a choice. You can only do so much, and at the end, if it's meant to be, it's going to be. That's just what I did at the end. I like gave it up, and I was like, this is not my problem anymore. This is like higher than me, and I'm not going to take the burden on, because this is a miracle that comes from above. And so, you know what I mean? And if I'm meant to be a mom, I will. And if I'm not, then it's okay. I will be an aunt to tons of kids in my family, which I already was. So, I really love empowering other women and just telling my story.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think it's that, like we said before, like there's so much power in storytelling. I wrote a children's book about IVF earlier this year. I'll show you guys really quickly. It's called Work of Art. Okay, it's kind of blurry, but basically trying to normalize the conversation around IVF and assisted reproductive technology, and have families talk about it. And I've had so many people say, how do I tell my kids that I had them through IVF? So that's why I wrote the book, which is my family story. So I think that, again, it's just another example of how storytelling can help others feel seen and feel less alone.
I love that. Okay. How did you make a decision about the number of embryos to transfer?
I don't want to keep talking, but I have a short answer. I only had one healthy embryo. I had 5 that were tested and only one came back, with all the chromosomes. And so I didn't have a choice. I did the one, and I got very, very lucky, and that became my son.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, Laura, go for it.
Well, I feel like I did mine in Texas because I was getting my master's degree for my master's in public administration. And I only had the choice. I could only transfer one embryo at a time. So I think it also depends on your doctor and where you are within the process.
Yeah, that's true. Some clinics will not let you transfer more than one, and some will be a little bit more open to doing multiple embryo transfers. That is a very good point, Laura. Okay, next question. Let's see. How do you let people know that you're trying without giving any details? People won't stop asking, when will I have my baby? This is yeah.
Yeah. I say you let them know that you are, everyone, even if you're not having to go through art, like, we should all just normalize not asking too many questions and letting people come out with information. But I think letting people know that, I'm going through this time and you can ask me questions. I may not answer them. But But yeah, this is a really sensitive time for people. And I think people just anywhere should normalize not asking too many questions. When's the baby coming?
I fully agree with you. It's especially at family events, right? Where like, it's always like that, the grandma or the older aunt who's like, when are you going to have, you just got married.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
And those questions can be so triggering. Especially if you're having a hard time. And I think one of the good, like kind of party lines to say is like, we'll let you know when, kind of taking back the ownership of it. And then that kind of like shuts down the conversation. But I know sometimes people mean well, but it can be so invasive, and it really can, you run to the bathroom crying at Thanksgiving because everyone's asking about it. I've been there. Laura cried in a stairwell probably after getting asked, right?
I did. This is why I like people pick up the phone and call me. We can cry together. I'll be there to hold space. But also learning self-advocacy on this journey. And this is a time to gain your voice, right?